Oh, welcome to this is our third rendition of Sanaa Online. And today we're going to be covering a grant writing class. We're going to be calling it Grant Writing 101 for musicians. Just a tiny bit of background about our organization here. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are called Second Line Arts Collective. The organization was founded in 2017, and our motto is music education from recess to record deals. In our nonprofit umbrella, we do have a couple different programs that we run. We have the Sanaa Music Workshop, which is a 2-week intensive music workshop for students ages 14 through 23. And we hold that workshop here in New Orleans, Louisiana. And just the basic premise of the workshop is that we wanted to combine arts education with entrepreneurship training for young people to address the current needs of musicians in 2024. Another part of the umbrella is a really cool young children's program called Little Stompers, and we produce concerts for young people. We also have I guess a mommy and me would be the best comparison, but we have a family class that is geared towards sharing our love of New Orleans music with families and young people. And we're going to upload this PDF for y'all. So if you guys would like to find out more about the organization, you guys can visit our website. It's secondlinearts.org. And of course, we do have a suggested donation for today's class, and there is absolutely no pressure to donate. It's just out of the goodness of your hearts. So we're just happy to have y'all here, and but we got to put the links in there anyways. My name is Gregory Ajid. I'm a clarinetist, saxophone player, band leader, sideman, and so on. I play with Delphio Marcellus. I've toured with Michael Bublé over the last couple years. And I've been performing professionally since 2009. I also teach at Tulane University. I was working at the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts for several years. And I am also one of the co-founders alongside with Darian Douglas, who is not here today, but I'm one of the co-founders of this organization. Today, we have a very special guest who's going to be leading our lecture, and not lecture, our workshop. And he is a very near and dear and an important part of our organization. We have Mr. Tom Mayer, and Tom is currently working as the Internet Archive Development Coordinator, and it's a very cool organization. If you all have not checked it out, I would highly suggest checking it out. I believe the website is archive.org, and they do all kinds of amazing things. I believe their mission is to just basically document the entire internet and digitize everything that's ever been created. And they have a really cool, there's a really cool function on the website called the Wayback Machine that pops up all the time in legal proceedings and the news. And so if you ever want to see what a website looked like 10 years ago, check out the Wayback Machine. Anyways, Tom is also our operations coordinator here at Second Line Arts Collective, and he has specialized in grant writing, fundraising, developing relations with major donors and organizations. Tom has a Master's of Arts in Global Creative and Cultural Industries and a Bachelor's of Arts. I'm going to go ahead and mute. Yeah, a Bachelor's of Arts in Ethnomusicology. Tom is responsible for a lot of the development that's happened here at Second Line Arts Collective. He's a wonderful dude and very knowledgeable about the fundraising and grant writing world. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom, and and I'm going to take a step back and let Tom take it from here. So Tom, you got it.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I joined Second Line Arts Collective in 2021, and I've been writing a bunch of grants since then, including grants for musicians. Hold on, I'm just gonna get my screen share all set up. Okay, awesome. And so I have been learning a lot over the past 3 years, and as it's become more apparent that hey, there are quite a few opportunities for musicians to apply for. There are great grants that are available to musicians, and this is a really viable way to build yourself a little safety net or fund a project or a tour or an album that you are really excited about. So I wanted to share a few lessons that I've learned, some tips. Um, If you have written a couple grants, fantastic. If you have never written a grant, you're not totally sure what we're even talking about, that is also fantastic. If y'all wouldn't mind, let's see, Zoom has this little raise hand function, right? Maybe not. Or you could drop it. Yeah, you could use this little raise hand function, or you could drop it in the chat. I would love to know if you have written a grant before. You could drop in a number like 1, 2, 3 or 0. Let me know where you are at and what you have, what your experience is with grant writing so far, just as I go over this agenda. So we're going to go over the very basics. What is a grant? We'll talk about the benefits and the drawbacks, what it's like to apply for grants and seek funding through grants. We will of course dive into what an application looks like and what grants typically ask for. I will share my writing tips and best practices, what I think makes a great grant proposal or a grant application. And then we will dive a little bit deeper into what opportunities are out there for bands and musicians. And we will actually spend a little bit of time today practicing some prospect research, which is just another way of saying identifying some high quality grants. And let's see. Cool. So what you're actually going to leave today with, you will walk out of this session with a list of great grants. You will experience researching a grant opportunity. We have a sample budget for you to practice with or use as reference. And you will also you will schedule in at least one upcoming grant opportunity that you are excited about. As I'm going through, please feel free, come off mute if you have a question or drop it in the chat. Greg here is going to be helping me make sure I don't blow by any questions that get dropped in. So really excited for this to just be like an informal presentation. If you have a question, please let me know. Cool. Let's dive in. What is a grant? So grants are sums of money awarded by nonprofits, could be a philanthropy, some other type of institution. For an artist, a grant can help you attend a residency, offset the cost of recording an album, hire band members or audio engineers. They can be awarded to an individual or sometimes an organization or a group of individuals. Many grants have specific stipulations, like the funds from this grant can only be used for whatever travel expenses or to pay salaries specifically. Be aware that many grants also have a reporting component. It's not like I apply for this grant, I write my application, I get the money, and I'm done. Actually, a lot of organizations are really excited to hear back from you. Hey, how did you spend our money? Remember to keep those receipts, and there will be a follow-up and a reporting component after you, excuse me, after you secured the grant. They want basically like a little debrief of how it went. Why write a grant? So securing a large grant can potentially be career changing. You could, the grants are a great way to help elevate your career, help you take that next step in your career without taking on any debt. So we will actually go over some grants today that are specifically designed to help you record an album, specifically designed to help you go on tour, where you are granted sometimes a very large sum of money. We will talk about a grant that's for $15,000 specifically for touring, and that money is not a loan, it is yours to spend. It does not have to be repaid. And the best news is the more grants you write, the easier it gets. You become more familiar with this process. You know exactly what types of questions are coming, and then you can take some very useful shortcuts. The more grant writing you do, the more shortcuts you can take to make your application process a little faster, a little more efficient. Cool. Any questions so far? Beautiful. Okay, on the flip side, so there's some great things about writing grants. A couple other things to keep in mind that grants are often extremely competitive. So this is not like the most applicable stat for the musician world, but for professional grant writers who are working for nonprofits or other institutions where grant writing is a large part of their funding strategy, a success rate of 30% is pretty solid for grant writers. So for every um, grant they secure, they're expecting 2 rejections. So it can just be tough to secure grants consistently. Sometimes partial grants will be awarded though. So you apply for $5,000 for a grant, and maybe you'll be awarded 2,500. That does happen. And as I mentioned, grants can be really narrow in their scope. So just a couple of examples. There's the More Joy grant from Arts New Orleans. This grant is specifically for Mardi Gras Indians and social aid and pleasure clubs. If you are a jazz musician, this is not the grant opportunity for you. There are other more eligible, more applicable grants. This is specifically for parading Mardi Gras Indians and social aid and pleasure clubs. Another type of scope is like by location. So South Arts has this wonderful grant called Express Grants, but it's specifically for organizations in rural communities. The population has to be 50,000 or less. So if you're here in New Orleans, again, this is not the right opportunity for you. And then one more great example that we will talk about more today, the Copland Recording Program Grant can only be applied towards the cost of professional studio recording, which is great. I hope that many of you are planning recording projects in the future, and this might be a great opportunity for you, but it's not great for a live performance, planning a tour, planning a residency. It's got to be specifically for recording. And then some funders will not consider the same applicant 2 years in a row. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say applicant. It's like if you were awarded a grant in 2023, you might be ineligible to even apply again in 2024. So if you are awarded a grant, congratulations, but you might not be able to consider it like a sustainable source of funding, because they might say, hey, you have to wait 5 years, or you have to wait 2 years because you were awarded this grant. You need a little bit of space before you can apply again. Cool. I would love to dive into what grant applications usually look like and what grants ask for. So grants are most often, pretty much all the time, they are narrative based. They are asking for lots of descriptions. They're asking for whole paragraphs of information. And to me, I like to think of grants kind of like an argumentative essay. Hold on, sorry, y'all, let me move this up. Just adjust my screen quickly. Cool. You get to make your argument. You get to write why you are deserving of these funds and why you fit what the criteria, the stipulations. Here are a couple of actual grant questions that I have answered in the past and come across. So like outline the full scope of residency activities, including the creative work, the public performances, any community engagements that are included. Describe how this tour will have an impact on your career or on your artistic development. And the impact of your music. Describe how you think or hope that your music affects people who come to see it performed live. So you can interpret this in many different ways, and it's up to you to answer it authentically. These are all very personal questions. I was helping a couple of musicians apply for grants. These are all, directly from grants that are great opportunities specifically for musicians. And it was very cool to have that conversation with them and hear how they wanted to approach each of these questions. When you all see these questions, I'm just curious if you have any immediate responses, or if you are someone who has applied for a grant before, if you have some experience answering a question like this, I would be excited to hear from you if you're willing to hop off mute and just share, hey, here's how I approached answering a question like this, um, please feel free to hop in.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
is it Jessia?
My name is Tasia.
Asia. Hi.
Tasia, yes, Tasia. Um, I'm currently based in Houston, Texas, and I have received one residency grant from an organization called Project Row Houses. And they did ask similar questions to this. It was my first grant that I applied for, and I got it, which was really cool. I try to think of it when they're asking that question, as if they are an investor of some sorts. Like, how can I easily express how I'm scaling what I'm doing, even if I may not have a lot of numbers, maybe from past shows that I've put together and things of that nature. Um, so in regards to touring, I'm looking to receive bigger grants to help me be able to produce some of the projects that I need a budget for, as well as
Mhm.
possible touring for those projects. So in my mind, I'm just learning, okay, with the live performances that I've done, the the gigs that I do, and just me developing my craft, how is that scaling my contribution to society? And how is that in turn contributing to them? Because they're the ones who would be giving me that money, you know? And that's the beginning thought. And so I'm just trying to get better grants so I can know how to answer that question even better so that they can see that value of themselves in my work and in my developing craft.
Awesome. Tasia, thank you. I love that approach, almost thinking of a grantor as an investor. What is someone who is investing significant funds in you in your career? What do they want to know about you? What do they want to know about your music? I think is a really cool strategy. And I hopefully I have a couple of tips and tricks for you here in this presentation that will help you elevate your grant writing a little bit. Cool. Thank you for that. So, other things that grants will ask for, a letter of intent. You will probably see the letters LOI. It goes by a couple different names. There's letter of intent, letter of interest, one more, but they're all pretty much represented by LOI. Think of it as like a mini grant proposal or the first step in the grant process. Many grant applications will ask you to submit this LOI first. And you should think of it as it's just your elevator pitch. It's one page, maybe 2 or 3 pages that includes some background about you, your needs, your activities, how you're going to evaluate the success of this project or whatever you're seeking funding for. And then you submit your LOI. If the organization wants to hear more and offer you the full proposal, they will get back in touch and say, hey, congratulations, we want you to submit this full application. Every grant I have ever applied to has asked for a budget, and we can talk about budgets a little bit more. Letters of recommendations from partners. I have seen this. It's not as common, but for me, writing for organizations primarily, that would be a letter of recommendation, maybe from a board member, a partner organization. For you all as musicians, this could be a letter from venues, from your bandmates, from a manager. I have seen this before, especially the Jazz Roads tours grant asks for some documentation from venues that you will be applying to tour to. And then work samples. Again, as musicians, for you, this is audio recordings and video recordings. This is pretty common. So already as you are preparing to write some grants in the next couple of months, next couple of years, think about what audio recordings or like YouTube links you have all ready to go that would be great to include that really share who you are as a musician, who you are as an artist. All right, I would love to dive into some grant writing tips that I have learned, sometimes the hard way, over the last couple of years. The best advice I ever received about grant writing is follow the instructions. This is not grants. It's not like it's not a creative writing assignment. While I certainly like to include, emotion and some motivation for why we do what we do, it is most important if a grant is asking me a specific question, answer that question specifically. So all those previous, let's see, I can just jump back here really quick. We got these common questions. Answer these questions as specifically and as directly as you can. Of course, many popular grants will have lots of information for you to review, like FAQs, eligibility, the requirements of the specific program. Definitely read those, make sure you're applying to the right type of grant, that you're actually eligible to apply for it. Any specific requirements that will actually make you eligible to receive funds, super important. And pretty much every grant has like this extensively written out and described and available for you to check out. And then some grants even provide a PDF version of the grant itself. And let me back up. What we are seeing now in 2024 is a lot of grants have a little portal. It's like, you make a username and a password, and then you can access the grant application and fill it out page after page. What's really helpful is when they provide a little downloadable cheat sheet and say, here are the 10 questions that are going to be included in this grant. So this is super helpful, of course, just for strategic, like knowing how to answer these questions and writing everything out. But it's really useful also for budgeting time. So, is this a 5-question grant? Is it a 25-question grant? That's super useful to know. What's been really, really helpful for me over the last 3 years, if possible, create some kind of connection, however tenuous it is, even if it's just an email conversation, but create a personal connection with the humans on the other side of this grant process, the folks that are reading the grants, that maybe they are just administering the grants. If there are webinars, office hours, any other type of info session that's being led, go ahead and hop in there, or at the very least, come up with a question that you have about this grant and email info@XYZ or whoever is the administrator of this grant. This has kind of saved my bacon a couple times. I'll tell you 2 quick stories. One, we have a great relationship with the manager at a small family foundation. And we secured a grant a couple of years ago, and I got back in touch. I saw that they were about to open their application process again. I just reached out and said, hey, we're excited to reapply. Should we apply for the same program? Like, you funded this specific program. It was our Sanaa Music Workshop. You funded Sanaa last year. We would, of course, be really excited to reapply for our next Sanaa Summer Workshop. And the grant officer came back and said, actually, no, don't do that. The board, the funding committee, is really excited to focus on brand new projects this year. They're not really excited to fund something they funded in the past. That information was not anywhere on the website. If I hadn't reached out, I absolutely would have applied for Sanaa again, and probably would have been not disqualified, but I just wouldn't be considered. So I'm very glad that I reached out. And then another quick story. A couple of years ago, I applied to 2 different grants for the same thing, which is pretty common, to help pay artists' salaries. For the teaching artists who come and actually lead sessions and lead combos at Sanaa. I wanted to apply for a couple of different grants because, hey, that award rate is pretty low. Well, I got both of them. which I was very happy about. But now I had two different proposals that said, hey, I'm specifically going to spend your money on this one thing. Again, I had a relationship with one of the grant committees and reached out to them and said, would it be okay to pivot and spend this money on something else? And they said, yes, no problem. Administrative fees are within the criteria, and that's an eligible expense. So you can use that other grant to pay the artist fees, use the money from us to cover the overhead and cover some of the administrative costs. So I'm very glad that I was able to reach out, and everything worked out great. Cool. Grant reviewers appreciate brevity. If you think about the process from their perspective, they maybe have 50 or 100 grant applications that they have to read, or it might be 50 or 100 every day for a week, depending on the size of the program. So if you have, we already saw those character limits, or like word limits are very, very common in grants. And if you have 2,000 word limit, but you can answer the question in 1,000 words, answer it in 1,000 words. There's no need, there's really no benefit to like maxing out all of your grant answers. And then let's talk about ChatGPT. Should you use ChatGPT? Yes, asterisk. So someone described ChatGPT to me as a calculator for the English language, which I think is a very apt description. I don't think ChatGPT is a great writer. I can recognize it very easily when I run into AI generated prose, I guess, out in the wild. I can recognize it pretty immediately, and I bet that professional grant officers can too. So what I would recommend, if you are, I love writing. So I don't use ChatGPT a lot. It comes very naturally to me, which is, I'm very thankful for. If you are not as excited about writing, no worries. I think you should try using ChatGPT to generate some answers, and then make sure that you go through it and switch things up and read it out loud, print it out and read it, a physical copy of it, or hand it to your partner, your mom, a friend that you trust to go over it and get that feedback, which is good advice anyway for proofreading. But I would recommend not submitting ChatGPT generated answers without adding your own personal, spice on it first. Cool. Is everything, any questions so far? Again, feel free to come off mute, drop something in the chat, make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, Greg says he uses it to proofread. That's really cool. I'm sorry, I'll cut you off. Chloe, go ahead. Maybe not, all good. So yeah, you could also write something and submit it to ChatGPT to proofread. I think that's a really cool idea. Oh, wrong way. Cool. My next tip is that grant reviewers, grant officers love data. It is catnip for grant review committees. So anytime you can kind of shoehorn in data into your answers, I would recommend doing it. I just brainstormed these. Y'all probably know the data that you are most comfortable with, and maybe the data that tells your story most effectively. You can use that. Here's some ideas. Your number of social media followers, number of cities or number of countries that have streamed your music, the gender ratio of your streaming audience, number of live audience members on the last tour. This is something that you can ballpark, like you can check the capacity of the venues you were playing. If it was a full house, you can, max out all of those numbers. And then just like the sales, the streaming numbers from your last album, whatever tells your story. The more data, to me, the more data, the better. And I'm curious if anyone has any experience, if for those who have written a grant, what are some types of data? What are some stats that you have included in previous grant applications?
Hi. So I've been applying to grants for like the last 6 months for an organization called Swingin' Sounds in Portland, Oregon. We'll be providing, we're a nonprofit organization that'll provide a no-cost jazz education program to 5 different middle schools in the area. Starting in September, we'll also have monthly community engagement events where local community members will present just different, musical subjects or performances that will be free to the public. Where also we'll host an all ages jam. There's a very vibrant jazz scene here, but a lot of there's not a whole lot of access for youth and younger kids in the area. So
Mm.
that's mainly like what our program is supporting. In the last 6 months, I've been applying to some different grants, and some of those grants, some of those data that I've been trying to compile and think of, and things that I've been asked is like the percentage of ethnic and like financial areas that I will be supporting, and like the number of kids that I'll be attending, the number of essentially people that my program will just impact, and really like specific numbers. Like I've applied to a couple of bank grants, have asked for like mainly diversity and like DEI based questions has been most of the data that I need. Um, because most of the things I'm applying for are like education and arts-based grants. But definitely like thinking more towards like social media. That's something that like I could build on a little bit more. So I think that's great. But
Yeah.
most of my data has been like DEI based.
Yep. Also very common. Thank you, Neil. And it sounds so. This is an existing program. You have stats to share already, or you are projecting.
So So I am projecting at this
Yeah.
point. I do have 5 schools that are confirmed, and I have like letters of recommendation. We've had a couple of community events already, and I actually have one today, and I have one planned for August as well. That's going to be a larger event that 2 of the larger musicians, Daryl Grant and Owen Broder, are going to be performing at that one. But it is a newer organization. Like I have 5 schools that are confirmed that we're starting in, I believe, late September. But this is the first year of our program.
Very cool. Well, congrats and best of luck. For sure, I would share some data around those schools, whether it could be as something like how long those schools have been operating. It could be the number of students, and of course, it sounds like you're already well into projecting your impact. Hey, we will impact X number of students at each one of these schools. I think that totally makes sense. Best of luck. Cool. If there are any other examples of using data, feel free to shout them out. My other piece of advice here is whether you are awarded the grant or not, ask for feedback. Sometimes you will see in the grant description like, hey, we actually don't provide feedback. We get whatever 2,000 applications every year, so we are just not in a position to have those conversations. But many times you can get in touch with someone. It kind of kills 2 birds with one stone. You get some feedback on maybe why you did not secure that grant, and you also again build that personal relationship with someone on the other end of the team. You get to share a little bit more about yourself, why you're applying for this grant, what you care about, and that only benefits you in the long term. Cool. Very quickly, the number one rule of grant writing, at least according to me, is to never write your answers directly into an online grant portal. Again, as I mentioned, you usually have to, there's like a bunch of different grant portals, Submittable, Grantly, whatever they are. You have to make a little username and password, and then and the questions and answer text fields come up, and you can type them in, and that's how you submit. I highly recommend never doing your creative work of actually writing and editing. Don't do it in the grant portal itself. Always write your entire grant in a Google Doc or Microsoft Word, whatever, something that auto saves. These portals are famously buggy. It will eat your work. It will disappear. So do all of your actual prep work in a Google Doc, and then when you're happy with it, you're going to copy and paste it into the grant platform. If you take away nothing else from this presentation, this would be the thing to remember. Okay, if there are no other questions, I would love to just highlight a couple of really great grants that I want you all to know about. This is not the only time you will see them. At the end, I have a whole resources page that has like a spreadsheet included of, I think, 11 or 12 grants with all of this information. So you don't need to like scribble these down or anything. We've got it saved for you. Cool. The New Music USA, New Music.
I
Oh, go ahead. What's up, Deja?
I'm sorry. I do have a question.
Yeah,
Um,
please.
I am currently in a space of learning how to scale better, like being able to give that the hard facts and information when applying for a grant. And
Hmm.
as of now, the things that I've considered is like, okay, any place I've performed, what is the capacity, possible ticket sales, um, but I'm not completely sure what else to pull from, like while I'm still figuring out what metrics you use for scaling.
Hmm. My first instinct is like, what is your digital footprint? Are you posting music on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok?
So I've released an EP. I regularly post on my Instagram, but in this moment, I've been doing gigs and a few residencies here and there. I just graduated in December, so now I'm able to take a little bit more initiative with recording and documenting certain things. I'm a part of different organizations now, so I'm just like trying to expand my networking and document the things that I'm doing a little bit more, but it's been mostly live music and jam sessions and being hired for somebody's party or things of that nature.
Yeah. Um, if you are not, so like again, if you feel comfortable sharing some of the behind the scenes data from Instagram, like, hey, here's how many impressions I've gotten or clicks through from Instagram to my CD website, anything like that, web page visits. What you could also do is maybe approximate how many total hours of live performance you have done in the past year. I'm not sure if you are super OCD about like capturing uh, tracking your gig hours or anything like that. But even a
Mhm.
ballpark, especially if that is your focus, like this is, you want to again tell the story of your musicality, and if it's based in live performance, let them know. And again, it can be a ballpark. It doesn't have to be, as long as you're including, like, be truthful and say, hey, approximately whatever it is, 500, 1,000 hours of performance, of live performance time in the past, whatever it is, year, 2 years. That I think helps tell your story, and there's an impressive stat for folks to better understand where you're at in your career, and why you're ready to take that next step, because you've bagged this many hours, X hours of live performance. I think would be really interesting to, and to, that's the first thing I could think of, but I'm sure in that, going down that path, you could come up with some other really interesting stats around your live performance experience.
Okay, so anything is really fair game to use if I can just know how to say it.
Yes. And again,
With
like, be authentic. Don't inflate anything. Be truthful in your grants, but get creative with how you are presenting yourself, and what you care about. Yeah,
Of course. Of course. Okay, thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Cool. Some really high quality opportunities for musicians. From New Music USA, here's $5,000 for any individual music creator. So if you are a writer, a performer, a composer, and from there, this is their language. This opportunity is for musicians who need support reaching the next level in their career. The application opens last year, it was in mid-December. I love these two. I wanted to highlight these two grants because I feel like, first of all, they're extremely broad. Pretty much anyone can apply for them. And the application is for New Music USA. This application is quite brief. It's pretty easy to apply to. They make it very user friendly, very musician friendly to apply for this grant. So I would definitely, keep your eye on this web page. This for when the next application opens. And then this is kind of a staple of grants for musicians. South Arts Jazz Road Tours. This is up to $15,000 to offset pretty much any type of cost associated with touring. So food, you're renting a van, flights, hotel costs, actually paying yourself and the musicians on the tour. Those are all eligible costs. Though there are multiple application windows each year. The next one is in just a couple days, June 1st. I would not, if you have not started this application, I would not recommend it, but no worries. The next one's coming up in October 1st. There's a lot of, this application is a little lengthier. There are a lot of details. This application does require quite a bit of prep work of planning your tour. Yes, thank you. Josephine just dropped something very useful in the chat. They do require proof and confirmation from each venue. Like you're scheduling out this potential tour, and they need a signature basically from each venue that you are going to stop at. It's a little bit of a time investment to apply for this, but man, $15,000 to help you accomplish a multi-city or multi-state tour, I think is a really fantastic opportunity. And they've designed this grant opportunity really well, again, to like be super impactful. It's through South Arts, which is like the Southern United States, but any musician in the US is eligible. Cool. More to come on these a little bit later. And then we're based in New Orleans. I think we have quite a few New Orleans musicians on this call, so I wanted to shout out 3 opportunities specifically here in New Orleans. Threadheads is like they're sort of a grassroots collection of New Orleans citizens and music lovers, and they put together a grant application each year. So this is their language. They support musicians, artists, future musicians and artists, others involved in endeavors related to music. It's up to $6,000. And last year, this opened in October. It seems to be kind of in October or November every year. Louisiana Project Grants. This is technically a government grant. It's through Louisiana Division of the Arts, and it's essentially administered by Arts New Orleans, like our local, attached to like the city government. It's here in New Orleans, it's $5,000. I'm not sure why in the rest of the state it's $7,500. I'm not sure why we're capped at 5. But it's for any kind of arts project. It must show how this project accounts for the population of the region and promotes DEIA. Focus on learning as an outcome, I think is a really interesting, like keep that in mind. That should kind of send some bells and whistles off in your head. Okay, I'm going to be I'm going to be arguing why my grant application is a learning opportunity. And individuals are encouraged to apply via a fiscal agent. And I will share more about that in one moment. I just want to highlight the Jazz and Heritage Community Partnership Grant, and I actually might call in Greg to talk a little bit more about this, because this is a very common grant in New Orleans that Greg has secured himself through this last category, which is open to individuals. Greg, can you say a word on it?
Hey, yeah. So if anyone here is thinking about doing their first grant. I believe this grant is open to residents of New Orleans, possibly the greater New Orleans area. I would highly suggest this as being a great first grant opportunity. The Jazz and Heritage Community Partnership grants are sponsored by the New Orleans Jazz Fest, and part of their mission is to support community programmings and things of that sort. I believe that the first three over here, the education programs, the after-school summer education, and also the festival and concerts, those are for nonprofits and organizations specifically. And also the last one, the Jazz and Heritage Media documentation, that is open to individuals. So I have in the past written that grant to help finance a CD project. And yeah, you know, the Jazz and Heritage, the foundation is very generous in their acceptance rate and their approval rate. And I think they actively take a lot of pride in saying that they fund like 97 or 98% of grant recipients. So I would highly suggest, if anyone in New Orleans is not taking advantage of this, I think you're losing out on, I'm not going to say free money, but this is as easy as it can get. So that's definitely check this out. And I believe their grant is coming up in July. I think the end date is coming up in about a month and a half or so. So definitely get on that if you're a New Orleans resident and you have a project coming up that you'd like to tackle.
Awesome. Thank you. Looking at the time, I want to make sure we get to an activity here. I'm going to very briefly go over fiscal sponsorship, which is essentially some grants, specifically like this one, Louisiana Project Grant, is only eligible for nonprofit organizations. Only like as an individual, you cannot apply for this grant. However, they're still encouraging individual musicians to apply for this by partnering with a nonprofit. So a fiscal agent is a nonprofit organization. They act on behalf of the sub-applicant. They assume some legal and fiscal responsibility for managing the funds, but essentially they're acting as a pass-through. You would include them in your application as the fiscal agent. If awarded the grant, the money would go to them. The money would go to this nonprofit, and then they get the money in your hands. How is, up to you and the nonprofit, whether it's like a check or a direct deposit, whatever. But that is how you can apply for grants that aren't open to individual musicians. You just have to have that conversation with a nonprofit, with a fiscal agent. So be aware that they do usually charge. They are actually, it requires a little bit of work. They have to account for it in their budget. There's all sorts of accounting and banking things that I'm not an expert in. But for that reason, it is very common for them to charge a percentage of the grant. So a fiscal agent will say like, oh yeah, we'll happy to be your fiscal agent for something 3%, 10%. Don't be alarmed by that, and you can include that cost in your budget. And I want to make you aware, here in New Orleans, MACNO, the Music and Culture Coalition of New Orleans, does offer fiscal sponsorship for free to individual musicians. Just reach out to them to start that conversation. Okay, cool. I see that I'm a little bit behind time. Okay, thank you again, Josephine. Appreciate it. There's some extra information there in the chat about the Louisiana Project Grant. Every grant I've ever applied to has required a budget. And very quickly, I just want to show you, here is like an actual example of a budget template from a grant. So this is something to be aware of, how they are breaking up these buckets of expenses, and it's up to you as the applicant to essentially fill this in. How much? What are the artist's fees of your project? What's the travel cost, hotels and meals, any production expenses? So this is, a lot of grants have their own budget template that you have to use, but not all of them. Sometimes, usually smaller grants are like, family foundations, little things, smaller opportunities will say, just send us a budget in whatever form. Well, we have a sample budget here for you to make a copy of. And use if you are looking for just a very simple, this is very simple, but it is professional enough that you could make a copy of this, enter in your own information and submit it. And this would be clear and concise, and a grant officer would be able to read it. And also, if you want to just practice making a budget, this is a great option. Cool. I want to spend just 5 minutes together going over prospect research. So prospect research is just another name for identifying some really great grant opportunities that you want to apply for in the future. What are the high potential grant opportunities that are right for you in your career? Here are the questions that I tend to ask. Very basic things of like, hey, what are the actual requirements? What do I need to apply for this grant? Some background about the funder. Who are they? What are their core values? That will help me make the best argument, write the best grant I can. Obviously, some logistical stuff. How many steps and stages? Do they need an LOI, or can I just apply straight away? What are the due dates? What I'd love to do, I know we're a little short on time, y'all, but I think this is really important. So what I would love to do is actually kind of hit pause for 5 minutes. I am going to drop in 5 grants in the chat. Let me do that right now. And what I'd love to do is for us to take 5 minutes, and you can choose one of these that I just dropped in the chat and take a second to answer a few of these questions. Go check out one of these grants. And so we'll do that for 5 minutes. We will come back right at the top of the hour. Apologies, I know I'm a little bit behind here, but I hope you can stick around for just like 5 extra minutes after the top of the hour. That'll be enough time to wrap up. But take a second, take 5 minutes right now. I will go camera off, and right at the top of the hour, let's come back together. And if someone has something they want to share that they learned about one of these grants, that would be awesome. All right, see you in 5. All right, y'all, we're gonna come back together in about 1 minute. All right, all right. So I know it's the top of the hour. If anyone has to split, of course, no worries. We've got this is going to be recorded, and we'll have the all these slides and links for you. But I'm hoping someone would be willing to come off of mute and share a little bit about what they found, especially if you researched one of these grants that you are actually going to apply to. If you found one that's like really a great opportunity for you, I would love to hear from someone just very quickly what you discovered about this grant.
Hello.
No, so, oh, go ahead.
Uh, so I'm researching this new music USA grant, and I see that there's two strands, one for New York specifically and one for national, which is interesting. I don't know why they're separating. They're not giving that information in the FAQ, but I will be sharing this grant with some of my New York friends and applying to this grant myself. So
Awesome. All right, great to hear. Is this the first time you've heard about this grant opportunity?
I believe so. I have been feeding my Instagram algorithm uh, by saving posts for grants. So I'm just getting flooded with a whole bunch of grant opportunities. So I feel like I might have seen this one, but now that I have, it was suggested by you, I'm definitely going to apply.
Well, thank you. And hey, that's another really great suggestion. Put your algorithm to work for you. If you're saving a bunch of posts about grants, you will be fed more grants. So I like that. I will include that in the future, Jelani. Great. So I also just want to share how I calendar in grants. I've got a spreadsheet for as someone who writes a lot of grants. I've got my own process for reviewing like a grants pipeline. But for folks who are going to be just writing maybe 1 or 2 grants a year, this will probably suffice. Here's an actual grant that I'm going to apply to later this year. The due date is June 30th. So I've put in pro bono publico is due in my GCal on June 30th. I then go back about 30 days or a month and write myself a reminder and make sure I'm staying on top of it, and that I've given myself in case it's fallen off my radar. I now have a full month to get my act together, write this, draft it up, edit, and then make sure it's ready to submit in 30 days. So I would totally recommend this process when we hang up this call. Jelani, if you like New Music USA, go ahead and calendar in. I don't think I provided a specific like due date because I'm not sure it exists on the website yet. But if you find one, calendar in that due date, and then 30 days out, write yourself a reminder that'll pop up and remind you, hey, you got to submit this in 30 days. Awesome. If there are no other questions, this is my list of resources for you. So this top one, I have put together a little spreadsheet of, I think, 11 or 12 grants, including the 5 that I dropped in the chat. So those will be available to you as well. That I just want you to know about, check out, see if they are applicable to you. I mentioned the Music and Culture Coalition of New Orleans. They also have their own like financial resources page, including quite a few grants, and some even more information. They go really deep on like eligibility and how to apply. They're based here in New Orleans. Then I spent a little bit of time just like Googling grants for musicians, and here are two lists that I really liked. The Artist Trust list of national funders for individual artists, and then Candid, they're like a grant platform, but they actually put together a pretty decent list of grants for musicians that is broken out. You will see like a lot of regionally specific grant opportunities. So for my folks on this call who are not from New Orleans, you might find something that's applicable to where, like regionally where you are. This is a fellowship from New Music USA that I just thought was dope, and so I wanted to include it here for any female and non-binary artists. This is a full fellowship that includes money, includes like mentorship time, training, professional development. It's pretty cool. And then that sample budget that I mentioned a couple slides ago. Here's a link to it. You can make a copy and then use it to practice or actually use it to apply for a grant that you're excited about. That's it for me. Thank you very much. I'm about to drop, we have a quick survey. I'm really excited that y'all were here and I hope you got something out of this. I'm about to drop this survey in the chat. It is literally 3 questions. It should take you less than this should take you less than a minute to fill out. 1 second. Here we go. That should get you there. I would love your feedback so we can continue to improve this, make it even stronger in the future. I'd love your feedback. And I will hang out for the next 5 minutes or so, 5 or 10 minutes. If anyone has a specific question about something that was covered or just want to chat about something grants related, Greg and I will be on for a few minutes. And then I think Greg also popped in the chat where you can download the PDF version of this so that you can always hang on to it and use that list of resources. Thank you so much, y'all. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll be on for a few minutes if you want to hang out and nerd out about grant writing.
Yeah. All right, Tom, thank you so much. I don't know how we show our love for Tom via Zoom, but give him a virtual applause here. Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. That was awesome. And again, just Tom knows what he's talking about. Tom has raised a lot of money for us over the last couple of years. And as an organization, I can personally attest to my gratitude towards Tom and what he's done to helping us move forward as a nonprofit. Again, if you guys are interested in downloading the presentation, you can visit the Second Line Arts website. It's secondlinearts.org. And if you go to the Sanaa Online tab, you can download the PDF. All of the links that Tom was talking about are included in the PDF. So you can, yeah, and give Lonnie a follow on Instagram too. If you guys want to jump on and just drop your Instagrams on there too, we'll follow you and please go ahead and follow us. If you all are feeling so inclined, we do love donations. This is a nonprofit. We're doing these classes for the community. So we greatly appreciate that. And yeah, I'll be uploading this recording to you later this afternoon. So anyways, thank you all so much. It's great to
Thank you.
Out, and we're just really appreciative that you guys are joining us today. So thank you all so much, and we're hanging for a couple minutes.
I have a question about this topic. Thanks for doing this, by the way. I'm curious about how often are people applying for grants where they're creating a project for that specific grant opportunity versus trying to find a grant that fits a project that's already going to happen, whether the funding comes from them or not. I feel like when we were talking about the touring grants, most of those states have to be locked in and the tour is going to have to happen to fulfill those contractual obligations, whether or not you're getting the funding from that grant, versus some of the more collaborative perspective opportunities that you could create for a grant if an opportunity comes up from that. So what do you see in that zone?
This is a fantastic question. It's very chicken and the egg, I feel okay, I'm trying to take that next step in my career. Here's this opportunity. Does it need to organically fit what my vision is for my career, or should I be tweaking my vision to meet the grant? The short answer is like that's I'm not sure I'm in a position to really answer that. As I'm, I'm not a professional musician. My grant writing experience is more on the organizational side. In general, I am looking for grants that meet the specific, like the vision of of Second Line Arts Collective when I'm writing for Second Line Arts Collective. It's kind of I feel like that is a little bit of a personal decision. What I can say is it's not unheard of. Like I have talked to plenty of musicians who are like, "Whoa, this is a really great opportunity for me to. I've never thought about touring the Midwest, but this grant would allow me to tour the Midwest, and now I'm really excited about it. I'm gonna start making it happen." Um, so that is a little bit up to you. More like finding grants that or knowing what projects you are already excited about, and then finding grants, hopefully they exist, that match what you're trying to do feels like sort of the more typical process, but also that may not be reality. And what you are trying to accomplish there, you may not have a perfect grant application, a grant opportunity that's out there. So it's not unheard of to, um, like take a big swing on a grant that may change the trajectory of what you're trying to accomplish in the next couple of years.
Yeah, cool. Do you feel like the people reading the applications like to feel that the project is already set? That the project is kind of has been premeditated and designed, and there's a lot of thought put into it already? Or I feel like some grant funders might feel more important almost, like they might get a sense that if you're designing this project around their opportunity and they're integral to the success or the project happening at all, maybe that aligns with the kind of things that they want to be funding, but it might just be individual per opportunity.
That's another really great question, and I think it really does depend on the funder. And so I recently applied for a grant um, that was like, we're interested in ideas. This was not, in full disclosure, this was not for musicians. This was on the organizational side. But I've seen grants that are like, you have a cool idea, tell us your cool idea, and we might fund it. And then I've also like Jazz Road Tours is a really great example of like, we want to see that you have very meticulously thought this out. And one other sort of like asterisk around budgeting and these like really in-depth planned applications like Jazz Road Tours is it's okay if things go a little haywire. If like things don't, you make this proposal and you have these specific venues and you're awarded these funds, great, and then something changes, it's definitely not the end of the world. And if I were to add a slide here to this presentation, that I probably will in the future, is like the granting body, they're literally invested in your success and they want things to go well. And if things don't go according to plan, let them know. Funders don't like surprises. So when I told that story of like, hey, I got this other grant that can I spend your money on something else? Keeping those lines of communication open are great. And most of the time, funders will be like, okay, whatever, this venue failed. So your report is going to detail those changes. And you don't need to, it's like if you can't stick to the exact proposed plan, that is okay. And that's to be expected. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Cool. What else are y'all thinking?
I just had a question about when you like talking about music within a grant. Sometimes I feel like I struggle with either like describing super specific, like, oh, this sounds like this band. I list off bands. I'm not sure if they're going to reference, or I just always struggle with putting music, talking about it in words. What's the sound of your band? What's that? So I would, if you have any thoughts on that or what that process has been for you.
Fantastic question. So, genre is a myth, but if you are able to sort of put like describe your genre for the purpose of categorization, that's one option. But I actually think the more effective way to describe music is to talk about your inspiration or talk about your music in non-musical terms. Like the feelings, the emotions. Here is the inspiration for this music. I'm drawing on. I helped an artist with the Jazz Road Tours application, and what we ended up doing is describing his music more in terms of like spirituality and religion, and that ended up being a really strong application. Full disclosure, he did not get it, but he used that same language to apply for a similar opportunity, and he got that. So describing your music, I think in terms of more personal, I don't know, your journey, your narrative, and including some feelings, how you want people to experience your music, I think is a very powerful way to represent that.
Cool. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a question about
Gotcha.
connecting
Neil,
with.
you're next.
Oh,
Jelani, what you
sorry.
got? Sorry, Jelani first, and then Neil. We got you next. What you got, Jelani?
Okay. So connecting with grant writers. So people like you said you helped an artist. Did this artist go through an organization that you work with? Did they reach out to you personally? I'm imagining having someone like you on a team would just make that process easier. And also, is there like rates associated with hiring grant writers for work like this?
For sure. I did grant writing for musicians kind of ad hoc, when it was clear like I think there is a need for it. But I would 100% encourage you to give this a go yourself first. As I said, like the more you write grants, the easier it gets. Like if you get two grants under your belt, um, you have that language. Oh, I'm sorry. And maybe one more slide I totally would add to this in grant writing tips is plagiarism is 100% encouraged in grant writing. The only key to that is you should be plagiarizing only yourself. Don't copy other people's work, but the more grants you write, you have all of those answers banked, ready to go for the next grant so that you can take that, copy and paste it in, tweak a few words to best answer this new question. But my first answer, Jelani, is part of what we're doing at Second Line Arts Collective is encouraging entrepreneurship and moving musicians to the center of the economic power structure by hopefully reducing some barriers to these types of skills and encouraging you to build those skills yourself, number one. However, number two, if you are really excited to work with a professional grant writer, let me think. I don't really have like a network of professional grant writers. Can you remind me where you're based, Jelani?
Detroit, Michigan, Southeast Michigan. So
I don't have, so like definitely you could reach out to their freelance grant writers are very common. Like I'm sure there are professional grant writers who would be interested in helping you out or like preparing some narrative drafts for you. In general, grant writers are pretty costly. It could be 50 an hour, tends to be pretty common. So just heads up on that. And something like the Jazz Road Tour grant is a big time investment. That could be like 10 plus hours. So you're looking at $500, which could be worth it if you're getting $15,000. But just a heads up on that price. So I would if you're excited to like work with a freelance grant writer, I would Google freelance grant writer Detroit and go from there.
thank you.
What you thinking, Neil?
Yeah. Do you have any like I have a very similar mission to like the youth education that Sanaa has, as well as like other jazz organizations in the country, like Christian McBride's, like Jazz House Kids. Like we have a very similar mission. Do you have any recommendations for like either attracting larger donors or just in general approaching larger donors to try to attain a more sustainable like financial stream to like establish our program and to keep our program going consecutively. Because I have the idea of the program is successful at this point. Like I have 5 schools that are confirmed. The community is very excited about it. I have a full board of like board members, and like I've had a number of events that have been very well attended. But in applying to, and I also have like a running list of grants. Of a number of them I can't apply to until I have a couple of years of operation under my belt, but a number of them that I have already applied to, that I've gotten responses from a couple of them, a couple of declines, and like one that I'm in the last stages of on Monday. But I'm still kind of um, like evolving the idea of my budget to potentially like have to continually reduce it to be able to function off of what I'm able to raise in the short period of time that I have. Like that being said, I do plan on like having a recurring year and having it continue after this year, and it seems like I have the community support to do that. And after like going through, and like I said before, it's only been about 6 months of like researching grants and applying to different grants. So I still have a number of them that I've applied to that I have not heard back from yet. But like, what are your recommendations on approaching like either members of the community for donations or just larger corporations, like larger banks? Like I applied to a US bank grant or a US bank grant that was very brief, and it had like just a short narrative section and just essentially like DEI percentage questions. Like, do you have any recommendations for trying to like approach larger corporations like that, or like larger like community members to try to make those personal connections? Like I think what you were saying about trying to get feedback is great, but just yeah.
Totally. So this is literally the $1 million question. How much time do you have? Because I could talk on this. Actually, I will send you my email address, because this is like we
Definitely.
are in the same state. Like we are certainly on that journey. It's really tough for arts education, nonprofits. It just is. So a couple of things come to mind immediately. Number one, how is your board at this type of work? And making finding great fundraising opportunities could be a priority for your board, and saying this is the nature of this board work, is like opening doors, making connections, knowing who's on. There are lots of grants that are private. They don't have an open application. It's invite only, and the way you get that invite, from what I can understand at this point in our journey, is by having a board member who can get you that inside track. So little things like that, I would say board number one. Number two is it just takes time. We had a relationship with a larger sponsor that we kind of just kept warm for 3 years. We got a little something from them that was a great intro 2 years ago, and then nothing last year. They wouldn't even respond to us for a couple of years. And this year we got the single largest influx of financial support in our history from them, because we just kept them warm. So I would say build really strong relationships with donors, donors, corporations, grant officers, and expect it to pay off 3 years in the future. Like be ready to play the long game. Right now, that's kind of all I can share with you from expertise. We are building the plane as we fly it. And if I have more, I'll let you know. I'll be in touch if something really
Totally.
works. Cool. I
Yeah.
got one
Thank
in
you.
the you bet. When it comes to writing unrestricted grants, how do you focus your narrative, and what stands out to jurors when writing a narrative? This is a fantastic question. So unrestricted grant, I assume you mean like there are not a lot of stipulations. You can spend the money on anything, and they want to hear your idea and what you care about. Awesome. My thought would be have something specific already. Like this would not be the grant to be like, oh, let me check this out, and based on what they're willing to fund, I can come up with something really strong. This would be the grant where you have a fantastic idea. Maybe you've already laid the groundwork. Maybe my instinct would be it's like an existing program or an existing project of yours, Jess, that you need to get over the finish line, or you just don't have the fun. You have some other infrastructure from it, like you have a partner, or you have already an audience lined up that would benefit from some kind of new musical project or something that you're working on, and you can say you have some stats, you have some information ready to go. You can argue very, very clearly, this is why this is a good idea. Here's the data I'm drawing on to, like, I have a listenership of 20, there are 20,000 weekly listeners in New York City of my music. That's why I'm planning my tour through New York, and here are the whatever. I would go very specific, and it's something that you already are excited about, something that you're already planning to move forward with. I think that would be the strongest way to approach an unrestricted grant like that. Does that make sense? Cool. Awesome. Anyone else who's got a grant writing question or a second line question?
I appreciate the fact that some of the questions are like a lot of, we've had internal discussions about a lot of the questions that y'all are bringing up. Again, like the question of, do we modify our programming to match grants, or do we not apply for grants because that's just not what we do? We've had many extensive conversations about that. And we're also in a point of our organizational development where, yeah, we're trying to figure out how to get long-term sustainability in terms of our finances. And yeah, it's encouraging to know that other people are going through the same things. And I think that's ultimately the $1 million question here. But it's, I feel, to me also, an organization needs to have a track record, and, just kind of thinking about things like you're not going to get $1 million grant your first year. And, you need to have a body of work to show people that, when you get $1,000 grant, you can handle the money and you're going to produce a great program. And then eventually, things build up over time. And I feel like that's kind of been what we've experienced over the last 8 years, is that, the first year we had just private donations funding us. The second year we received 1 grant and 1 private donation. And 8 years later, we're in a whole different ballgame, and we're able to apply to much bigger things now that, we have a track record of, again, programming and things of that sort. Time. The goal is 10 years, y'all. You got to make it to 10 years.
Jess, I see your question. Any tips for emerging artists that don't have an extensive repertoire? Specifically for grant writing, you definitely could. So you could definitely emphasize your career goals when you're writing for a grant. You could emphasize, here's what I'm driven to do, and here's what I will do with this money. You can make the argument that this is what will put you on the map or establish you as an emerging artist, or establish you as an experienced artist by using these funds. That's what comes to my mind. I'm curious if anyone else on this call has applied for a grant without a ton of tours already completed or a ton of music already made. If someone else has can answer that question.
Can I jump in here real quick? To me, this really feels like an opportunity to take advantage of what you can do. And, my whole thing is that we live in 2024, and you don't need to ask anyone for permission to do things. You don't need a record label to back you anymore. You don't need to hire a $100,000 film crew. And fake it till you make it is not the right way of saying it, because I think everything that you do should ultimately be authentic. But you have to take advantage of social media. You have to take advantage of the ability to record and produce projects on your own. And a lot of us are not taking advantage of the fact that we can produce a very professional looking facade, even though we're still at a beginning stage of our artistic development. And it's really easy to reach a billion people, or I don't know how many people are on the internet these days, but in 1990, you had to ask someone for permission to reach the masses. You had to ask a newspaper editor to get an article published. You had to ask a record label exec, like, please put my record out there. And today you don't need to ask for permission. You can take on just again, embody the spirit of entrepreneurship and decide for yourself that I'm going to be that person. I'm going to create this professional facade. I'm going to create a website that looks professional. I'm going to create an Instagram that looks professional. To all of you, I would just highly suggest, like, if there's an artist you admire, go on their website, go on their social media, and just imitate everything that they have out there in the real world. Because and there's nothing inauthentic about doing that. It's like you can still be at the beginning phase of your career, but there's no reason why you cannot create a very professional look for who you are and what you're doing.
For sure. All right, Jill. I got time for one more, and then I got to split. Does anyone have an unanswered question?
Sweet.
Beautiful.
Awesome. I have to jump on a staff training now for our summer camp coming up in a couple weeks. So to all y'all who are still hanging, really appreciate y'all being here with us. Please spread the word. We're going to have a couple more. We're going to be doing these workshops throughout the year, and we'd love to invite you to all of our programming and invite your friends and all that kind of stuff. Because I feel like, what drives me is that as artists, we deserve all the accolades, and we don't need the middle person anymore. So we need to take control of the business these days, and we can do it. So Tom, you did a fantastic job, and thank you so much for sharing all this with us. And yeah, we'll catch you all on the social medias, and thank you all so much for joining us today.
Yeah, please stay in touch, and I think we'll be back in August with our next Sanaa Online. We'll send out a little e-blast with the topic. If you haven't filled out that 3-question survey, please do. Would love your feedback. Take care. See you next time, y'all.
Thank you, guys.
Y'all. Thank
Take care.
y'all. Later.
Bye.